Now I have the proud privilege in inviting Honorable Union Minister of Civil Aviation and Steel, Shri Jyothiraditya Scindia ji, for his special address, and let's put our hands together to welcome him.
And I think from this melting pot, if you will, emerges new paradigms, new thinking. So indeed, it's a great pleasure to be here, and I think the topic that has been chosen by FICCI for this symposium and this conference, I think is apt in the current environment that we are going through on the global stage. The last 2 years have seen tremendous tectonic shifts taking place across the world. And one of the areas where these tectonic shifts have had their profound impact is in the displacement and the new placement of supply chains. What is very apparent to all of us in areas of business, in economy, across the world is the area of supply chains, even though not omnipresent, in many ways are the linchpin of success of economic growth paradigms across the world. Now, be that as it may, with regard to companies in every vertical, and we've heard some wonderful stories today, from civil aviation to automotives to logistics companies that actually make that possible, or it be that as it may with regard to countries and how they operate in the economic order, the global economic order. And I think India has moved tremendously along that paradigm as well, very clearly realizing the importance of supply chains, the concept of a whole of government approach, pioneered by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, as opposed to government working in silos, ministries across the board, as opposed to only working in their verticals, transcending those verticals and actually working across a horizontal, i.e., how does government make that project or that imperative truly a reality in the days to come. So I think there are three key words connected with supply chains. The first is its robustness. Obviously, it has to be able to deliver on that particular timeline every single time. The second has to do with its resilience. And the third has to do with its reliability. So the triple R approach, precepts of a successful supply chain paradigm. I believe that in India today we are creating that ecosystem for supply chains. Manufacturing with COVID, moving its intensity and its direction towards India also provides that opportunity. And I think that with the ecosystem being set up, there are changes taking place across the three most important fronts related to supply chain. The first is the policy front. And if you look at the policy front in India, there are some landmark changes that have taken place in the last 2 years. The whole concept of Prime Minister's Gati Shakti framework, wherein you have close to 16 line ministries working together to put infrastructure projects online. Multimodal projects. Many countries across the world provide efficiency across their logistics framework when transportation is not through a single mode of travel, but multiple modes of travel. First by sea, then by road, then by air, and the ability of a customer to be able to track his or her merchandise across that supply chain. So the PM Gati Shakti plan really brings that to bear in terms of a viability of that network. Then we have our robust capex pipeline. Almost 100 lakh crore capex pipeline over the next couple of years. The third is our PLI scheme, the productivity linked incentive scheme for many sunrise sectors, from drones to steel to pharmaceuticals to automotive products, to really power India as a manufacturing base for the world. And let me give you a quick example for that. In the area of steel, we put together a PLI for specialty steel products. Almost a 6,322 crore project in terms of a PLI scheme. We closed that out just about 2 days ago. And we've had close to about 35 companies bid in for almost 79 projects, looking at a capacity augmentation of almost 28 million tons per annum with an investment of 41,000 crores, creating close to 69,000 new jobs. Now that's the kind of fillip that one can look at through the PLI schemes. The fourth is the National Logistics Policy that was unveiled by the Prime Minister just 3 days ago, which puts a new impetus on the logistics front. So when we talk about the policy front, we also move to the operations front. And the concept of ease of doing business in India, to be able to cut through the red tapeism. And I believe that at least in the two ministries that I am in charge of, our role in government is no longer that of being a regulator, but our role in government is one of being a facilitator. Because I believe that when we work with industry, when we work with stakeholders, whether they are in the public sector or the private sector, when we ensure their success on a level playing field, the globe, putting in place bilaterals and trilaterals to ensure that we give a fillip to our manufacturing sector, our services sector in India. McKinsey has put out a study that the logistics sector in India, which is close to about $200 billion today, should grow at a CAGR of close to about 10%, moving it from a $200 billion industry to almost a $320 billion industry by 2025. Now that's the kind of growth that we look at in the logistics sector. Finally, I think that we as a country need to concentrate on four key fronts. The first is to be able to reduce the cost of logistics. Logistics today and supply chain is a key part of that, constitutes almost 13 to 14% of our GDP. We must reduce that to a single digit number. And I think the Prime Minister's prerogative and his sankalp on that front, whether it be through PM Gati Shakti, whether it be through the national infrastructure pipeline of almost $1.8 trillion, is to ensure that we reduce that logistics cost for all our manufacturers in India. The second is to enhance our export competitiveness. I firmly believe that India will become the manufacturing powerhouse for the world. And we will grow to a market beyond the $400 billion, that possibly becoming the third largest economy in the world by the year 2030. That very much is within our grasp. But if we put this paradigm in place, if we put this framework in place, that dream will soon become a reality. Finally, I'd like to say the fourth is to really bring about a paradigm shift in the way we look at reforms. And the Prime Minister, with his thought of one nation, one market, one nation, one ration card, one sun, one world, one grid, the International Solar Alliance, of which India is a very fundamental part of. All of these reforms, whether at the global level, whether at a country level, or whether at a local level, will really transform India into the global superpower that she must become in our journey from our Amrit Kal to our Shatabdi Kal. Thank you very much for having me.